You messed with the wrong woman.
Her SEAL combat pass changed everything.
The desert sunrise painted the mountains in shades of amber and gold, but Emma Hartwell barely noticed the beauty. She sat quietly in the back of the medical supply truck, her hands folded in her lap like any other volunteer on the humanitarian convoy. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple braid, her face free of makeup, her clothes modest and practical. To anyone watching, she was just another aid worker hoping to make a difference in a war-torn region. They had no idea they were looking at one of the most dangerous women in the world. Emma had spent 6 years with Marine Force reconnaissance, earning her place among warriors who initially questioned whether a woman belonged in their ranks. She had answered those questions with actions rather than words, completing missions that others deemed impossible. Her specialty was infiltration and extraction in hostile territories, moving through enemy lines like smoke through fingers. But that was her old life. Now she wore the mask of Emma Walsh, a pediatric nurse from California who believed in helping children caught in the crossfire of conflicts they never asked for. Colonel Raymond Blake had personally recruited her for this operation 2 weeks ago. 8 hostages were being held in a fortified compound 20 miles from the Pakistani border. The terrorist cell holding them had connections to 3 major planned attacks on Western targets. Traditional military assault was impossible due to the terrain and the risk to civilian populations in surrounding villages. They needed someone who could walk in through the front door, someone the enemy would never suspect. They needed Emma. Sitting beside her was Dr. James Morrison, a genuine humanitarian doctor who had been working in conflict zones for 15 years. His weathered face held the kind of tired compassion that came from seeing too much suffering and refusing to look away. He had no idea that his new nurse was anything more than she appeared. The less he knew, the safer he would be when things went wrong. And things always went wrong. Their local guide, Rashid, drove the lead vehicle with practiced ease through roads that barely deserved the name. He had been vetted by intelligence services and deemed trustworthy. But Emma never fully trusted anyone on missions like this. Trust was a luxury that got people killed. She memorized every landmark, every turn, every possible escape route as they traveled deeper into territory controlled by forces that viewed her presence as an opportunity rather than a threat. The convoy consisted of 4 vehicles, carrying medical supplies, water purification equipment, and vaccines for remote villages. It was a legitimate operation, which made it the perfect cover. Emma had studied the route for days, knowing they would pass within 3 miles of the compound where the hostages were held. Her plan was to slip away during a scheduled stop at a village clinic, then make her way to the compound under the guise of a lost aid worker seeking help. It was simple, which meant it had the best chance of actually working. Dr. Morrison leaned over with a warm smile. "First time in this region, Emma?" His voice carried genuine kindness that made her feel guilty about the deception. "Yes, doctor. I have worked in other areas, but never this far into the mountains," she replied, maintaining her cover story flawlessly. "I wanted to help where the need is greatest." "That is admirable. These villages rarely see medical care. We will be making a real difference today." Patted her hand in a fatherly gesture before returning his attention to his medical charts. Emma felt the weight of her concealed equipment pressing against her body. A compact communications device disguised as a medical alert bracelet, a ceramic blade hidden in the lining of her boot, a small emergency beacon sewn into the hem of her jacket. No firearms, nothing that would trigger suspicions if she was searched. Her most dangerous weapons were her training and her ability to read situations before they turned deadly. The convoy slowed as they approached a small village where they were scheduled to spend the morning treating patients. Children ran alongside the vehicles, their faces bright with excitement despite the hardships they endured daily. Emma watched them with genuine emotion. This was why she did this work, why she risked everything. These innocent lives deserved protection from the violence that surrounded them as they unloaded supplies. Emma noticed 3 men watching from a distance. They wore civilian clothes but carried themselves with the distinctive awareness of trained fighters. Her instincts screamed warnings. But she maintained her pleasant expression and continued helping Dr. Morrison set up the mobile clinic. The men exchanged words and disappeared behind a building. 2 hours into treating patients, a young girl of perhaps 7 years old approached Emma shyly. She held her arm at an odd angle, clearly injured but trying to be brave. Emma knelt down to her level, speaking softly in the local language she had studied intensively for this mission. "Let me see, little one. I promise to be gentle." The girl's mother stood nearby, watching with the protective wariness that all parents in conflict zones developed. Emma examined the arm carefully, a fracture that had been poorly set weeks ago. She would need to re-break and reset it properly to prevent permanent damage. As she prepared her supplies, explaining each step to keep the child calm, the sound of approaching vehicles made everyone freeze. 5 trucks roared into the village center, filled with armed fighters. They were not the regular patrol everyone had grown accustomed to. These men moved with aggressive purpose, their weapons ready, their faces hard with dangerous intent. Emma recognized the leader immediately from intelligence briefings. Khalid Nazari, a mid-level commander known for his paranoia and brutality. Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "We are medical volunteers. We have permission to be here. We mean no harm." Nazari ignored him, his eyes scanning the group until they locked onto Emma. Something in his gaze made her blood run cold. He barked orders in rapid dialect, and his men began searching the vehicles with rough efficiency. "Everyone line up. We will check your documents," Nazari commanded in accented English. Emma maintained her composed exterior while her mind raced through contingencies. This was not supposed to happen. Intelligence had assured her that this route was clear of hostile activity for the next 48 hours. Either their information was wrong, or something had changed dramatically. As the fighters moved through the line checking identification papers, Emma noticed one of them pause at their medical truck. He pulled out a piece of equipment she immediately recognized as a radio scanner, the kind used to detect hidden electronic devices. Her communication bracelet would be discovered in seconds. The young girl with the broken arm whimpered in pain, still standing beside Emma. Without thinking, Emma's training took over. She moved smoothly, positioning herself between the child and the approaching fighters while pretending to adjust the girl's sling. It was a subtle shift, the kind of protective positioning that came from years of tactical training, the kind of movement no civilian nurse would make. Nazari saw it. His expression changed from routine suspicion to sharp interest. "You," he said, pointing directly at Emma, "step forward." Emma did as ordered, keeping her breathing steady, her face showing appropriate nervousness, but not panic. She handed him her forged documents with hands that trembled just slightly. Not too much, just enough to seem authentic. He studied her papers, then looked at her face, then back at the papers. "You are American. I am a nurse. I came to help." Emma met his eyes briefly before looking down, the way a submissive woman in this culture would respond to a male authority figure. The fighter with the scanner approached Nazari and whispered something. Emma knew what was coming before it happened. They had found the electronic signature of her bracelet. "Search her," Nazari ordered. 2 fighters grabbed Emma roughly, their hands invasive as they searched for weapons. They found the bracelet immediately. One of them yanked it from her wrist and handed it to Nazari, who turned it over in his hands with growing understanding. "A medical alert bracelet that transmits on military frequencies," he said slowly. "How interesting." The village square fell silent. Dr. Morrison looked at Emma with confused betrayal. The mother pulled her daughter away, sensing danger. Rashid, the guide, backed toward his vehicle with calculated casualness. Emma knew the next 30 seconds would determine whether she lived or died. She also knew that 8 hostages were depending on a mission that was falling apart before it truly began. Sometimes the best plan was to abandon planning entirely and trust in training. When the fighter reached for her arm to restrain her, Emma moved. Her elbow struck his throat with precision that collapsed his windpipe. She twisted, using his body as a shield as gunfire erupted around her. The young girl screamed. Dr. Morrison shouted in horror. And Emma Hartwell stopped being a nurse and became what she truly was, a warrior. The chaos lasted exactly 12 seconds. Emma had trained for moments like this, where time compressed and every movement mattered. She disarmed the choking fighter, claimed his weapon, and fired 3 precise shots that dropped the men closest to the civilians. Dr. Morrison pulled the young girl and her mother behind, stonewall as bullets chewed through the dusty air where they had been. Standing moments before, Nazari dove behind his vehicle. Shouting commands to his scattered fighters, Emma used the confusion to sprint toward the narrow alleyways between buildings, drawing fire away from the innocent villagers. Her legs pumped hard as rounds kicked up dirt at her heels. She counted at least 15 hostiles behind her, maybe more. The odds were terrible, but she had faced worse. The alley twisted sharply, and Emma took the turn at full speed, then immediately pressed herself into a doorway alcove. 3 fighters rounded the corner in pursuit, moving too fast and too close together. Emma let the first one pass, then struck. Her captured rifle but crushed the second man's knee. As he fell, she swept the legs of the third, sending both crashing into the narrow passage in a tangle of limbs and weapons. She kept moving, climbing a crumbling exterior staircase to gain height advantage. From the rooftop, she could see the village spread below. Nazari was organizing his forces with professional efficiency, setting up a perimeter to trap her. More vehicles were arriving from the east. She counted 24 fighters now, all converging on her position. Her earpiece, built into what appeared to be a simple hearing aid, crackled with Colonel Blake's urgent voice. "Emma, your cover is compromised. Extraction team is 40 minutes out. Can you evade that long?" "Negative, Colonel. Too many hostiles. I need to change the game." Emma scanned the arriving vehicles and noticed something odd. The new fighters were not reinforcing Nazari's perimeter. Instead, they seemed to be taking defensive positions against both the village and Nazari's original group. "Emma, what are you doing?" Blake demanded as she moved across rooftops toward the new arrivals rather than away. Adapting, she dropped into a narrow courtyard, startling to fighters who were arguing in heated whispers. Before they could raise weapons, Emma held up her empty hands. "I am not your enemy today," the older fighter, a scarred man with intelligent eyes, studied her with calculating interest. "You are the American spy everyone is hunting. I am the American who just noticed that you are not actually working with Nazari." Emma spoke calmly, despite her racing heart. "You are watching him, waiting for something." The scarred fighter exchanged glances with his companion. "You are observant for someone running for her life. What do you know of our business?" "I know Nazari holds hostages. I know he is planning attacks. And I know that someone in his organization has been feeding information to outside parties." Emma took a calculated risk. "I know you are hunting a traitor, and you think that traitor might be Nazari himself." The scarred man's expression confirmed her guess. Emma's intelligence briefings had mentioned growing instability within the terrorist networks in this region. Power struggles and accusations of betrayal. She was gambling that this man represented a rival faction. "My name is Farid Ahmed," the scarred fighter said slowly. "I lead the eastern sector. Nazari has been making deals with foreign intelligence services, selling information about our operations while pretending to be loyal. He keeps hostages not for leverage but for profit, selling them to the highest bidder. This dishonors everything we fight for." Emma hid her surprise. Honor among terrorists was a complex thing, but she could work with this. "If you want proof of his betrayal, I can help you find it. But I need something in return. The hostages for a guest. You came for them. 8 lives that have nothing to do with your war. Help me get them out, and I will help you expose Nazari." Gunfire erupted nearby as Nazari's forces searched the buildings. Farid made his decision quickly. "Come, we do not have much time." He led Emma through a hidden passage between buildings, emerging in a compound where 30 more fighters waited. Emma calculated her odds of survival if this was a trap, but she had committed to the gamble. Farid brought her to a radio operator monitoring multiple frequencies. "Nazari uses encrypted communications with his foreign contacts. We have been trying to break the code for weeks," Farid explained. Can your military training help? Emma examined the equipment. Recognizing a commercial encryption system that was secure against local threats, but vulnerable to someone with her training. Give me 10 minutes. She worked quickly, her fingers moving across the controls with practiced efficiency. The encryption was decent, but relied on predictable key rotation. Within 8 minutes, she had broken through. The intercepted messages made even Farid's hardened fighters gasp with anger. Nazari had been selling hostages to multiple buyers, playing them against each other to drive up prices. He had also provided information that led to the death of 63 fighters from rival factions, all while pretending the intelligence leaks came from elsewhere. The most damning evidence showed he was planning to eliminate his own commanders and seize complete control of the region. This is enough, Farid said grimly. We will move against him now. What do you need for your hostages? Their location. Safe passage to extract them. And 30 minutes head start before your war begins. Farid considered this, then nodded. The hostages are not at the compound you were told. Nazari moved them 3 days ago to a warehouse near the border. Only his most trusted fighters know the location. He drew a rough map on paper. I can give you 2 of my men as guides. After that, you are on your own. Emma studied the map, memorizing every detail. The warehouse was 12 miles northeast, across terrain that would be swarming with hostile forces once the fighting started. 1 guide is enough. The fewer people involved, the better. Take my nephew Rashid. He knows the area well and speaks English. Emma's head snapped up. The convoy guide? Yes, he has been working for me, watching Nazari's movements. He tried to warn your convoy away this morning, but you arrived too early. Farid called over a young man who Emma recognized immediately as their driver. Rashid looked embarrassed. I am sorry for the deception, Miss Emma. I could not reveal my true purpose without compromising everything. We are all wearing masks today, Emma replied. Can you get me to that warehouse? Yes, but not during daylight. We must wait for darkness. 3 hours of tense waiting followed. Emma treated her minor wounds, ate the food Farid provided, and tried not to think about Dr. Morrison and the villagers caught in the crossfire she had created. Colonel Blake updated her on the extraction team's position, but they could not risk approaching until she had secured the hostages. As the sun set, painting the mountains in deep purple shadows, Emma and Rashid prepared to move. Farid approached with weapons and supplies. You have given us the proof we needed to act. This changes everything for our people. Whether you believe in our cause or not, you have helped us remove a cancer from within. I just want to save innocent lives. Emma replied honestly, That is something we can agree upon. Farid clasped her shoulder in a gesture of respect between warriors. May God protect your path. Emma and Rashid slipped out of the compound as darkness fell completely. Behind them, they heard the first sounds of Farid's forces mobilizing. The internal war was about to begin, and Emma had approximately 2 hours before the entire region became a battlefield. They moved quickly through terrain that seemed impossible to navigate in darkness, but Rashid knew every rock and ravine. Emma followed his lead, trusting his knowledge of the land, while her own senses stayed alert for threats. Twice they spotted Nazari's patrols and had to hide. Pressed flat against stone, while fighters passed within feet of their position. After 90 minutes of hard travel, Rashid pointed to a structure in the distance. The warehouse. 2 guards outside, maybe more inside. Emma pulled out compact binoculars and studied the target. The guards were alert but not expecting trouble from this direction. They were watching the main approach road, not the rocky slope where she and Rashid waited. The warehouse was old, built during the Soviet occupation, with concrete walls and few windows. I will create a distraction on the east side, Rashid offered. You can approach from the west when they investigate. If they radio for help, we will have dozens of fighters here before I can get the hostages out. Emma studied the building's layout, formulating a plan. Wait here. If I am not back in 20 minutes, contact Colonel Blake on this frequency. She handed him her emergency beacon. Tell him I failed. What are you going to do? Emma checked her weapons and adjusted her equipment. Something stupid that might actually work. She circled wide, approaching the warehouse from the unguarded rear. The building's age worked in her favor, as crumbling mortars allowed her to climb to the roof with minimal noise. She found a ventilation shaft that was rusted and weak. 3 minutes of careful work opened an access point large enough for her to slip through. Inside, Emma found herself in a loft area overlooking the main warehouse floor. Below, she counted 8 hostages, just as intelligence had reported. They sat on the floor, hands bound, guarded by 4 fighters who looked bored and tired. The hostages appeared in decent health, though frightened and exhausted. Among them, one face made Emma freeze. Sophie Chen, an investigative journalist who had covered Emma's unit 5 years ago during a different mission. Sophie had been embedded with their team for 3 weeks, earning the warriors' respect with her courage under fire and her integrity in reporting. If Sophie recognized Emma now, she would react, potentially alerting the guards. Emma needed a distraction, and she needed it without drawing additional forces to the warehouse. She studied the space, noting electrical panels, fuel storage, and structural weaknesses. An idea formed, dangerous but potentially effective. She moved silently along the loft, positioning herself above the fuel storage area. Using materials from her pack, she rigged a delayed ignition device, something that would create smoke and noise without causing actual casualties. Her goal was chaos, not death. These 4 guards were probably just following orders, not the architects of evil. As she worked, Sophie looked up. Their eyes met for a brief second across the darkness. Sophie's expression flickered with recognition, confusion, then understanding. The journalist's face became carefully neutral, giving nothing away to the guards. She shifted slightly, positioning herself to shield 2 younger hostages when whatever was about to happen began. Emma gave Sophie a subtle nod of acknowledgement, warrior to warrior, across different battles. Then she activated her device and moved toward the hostage's position. 30 seconds later, the warehouse filled with thick smoke and the sound of electrical systems shorting out. The guards shouted in confusion, rushing toward the source of the problem. Emma dropped from the loft, landing silently among the hostages. "Everyone stay calm," she whispered in English. "I am here to take you home." Sophie Chen stared at Emma with tears streaming down her face. But she remained silent, understanding that any sound could doom them all. Emma moved quickly among the hostages, cutting their bonds with her ceramic blade while the guards shouted frantically at each other through the smoke. The warehouse's old ventilation system was actually helping, pulling the smoke toward the guards and away from Emma's position. "Listen carefully," Emma whispered to the group huddled around her. "We have minutes, maybe less. Stay low, move when I move, stop when I stop. If shooting starts, hit the ground immediately. Do you understand?" 7 heads nodded in terrified agreement. Sophie helped a trembling elderly man to his feet while Emma assisted a young woman who could barely stand after days of captivity. Among the hostages were 2 teenagers, brothers who clutched each other with the desperate fear of children who had seen too much violence. Emma's heart ached for them, remembering why she did this work despite the cost to her soul. The smoke was beginning to clear. They had perhaps 90 seconds before the guards realized the fire was not spreading and returned to check on their prisoners. Emma led the group toward a side door she had spotted from above. Moving with practiced silence despite the difficulty of guiding 8 traumatized people through darkness, they were 15 feet from the door when one of the guards shouted. He had seen them. Emma shoved the hostages toward the exit while turning to face the threat. The guard raised his weapon, and Emma had no choice. Her rifle spoke once, precisely, and the man fell. The other guards were now fully alert, converging on their position. Go. Emma pushed the last hostage through the door and followed, slamming it shut behind her. Bullets immediately punched through the thin metal. She pulled a smoke grenade from her vest, her last one, rolled it back, toward the warehouse as they ran. Rashid appeared from the darkness, his eyes wide with fear and determination. "This way quickly." He led them down a ravine that provided cover from the warehouse. Behind them, more fighters were emerging from a barracks Emma had not known existed. At least 20 armed men were now aware of the escape. The elderly man stumbled, gasping for breath. His face had gone pale, his hand clutching his chest. Emma recognized the signs immediately. Heart attack, brought on by stress and exertion his body could not handle. She caught him as he collapsed, lowering him gently to the ground. "Keep moving," she told Rashid and Sophie. "Get them to the extraction point marked on this GPS." She handed Sophie a compact device. "Colonel Blake's team will meet you there in 23 minutes. Sophie understood what Emma was saying. "You are staying behind. He will not survive the run. I need to stabilize him here, then follow." Emma was already checking the man's pulse, calculating his chances. They were not good, but she would not leave him to die alone in the dirt. "I am not leaving you," Sophie said firmly. "Rashid, take the others. I have medical training. I can help." The journalist's courage was both admirable and frustrating. "Sophie, you need to go. 5 years ago, your team saved my life in Kandahar when that eye exploded near our convoy," Sophie replied quietly. "Your commander, Lieutenant Jackson, died pulling me from the wreckage. You think I forgot? You think I do not understand the debt I owe?" Emma felt the old wound in her chest, the one that never truly healed. Jackson had been more than her commander. He had been her mentor, the man who believed in her when others doubted. His death had been the reason she left active service, the weight of loss too heavy to carry into another mission. Until now, gunfire erupted nearby. Rashid was returning fire, protecting the fleeing hostages. Emma made her decision. "Fine. Help me stabilize him. Then we all move together." Working quickly, Emma administered emergency medication, while Sophie performed CPR with skilled precision. The elderly man whose name Emma learned was Thomas Whitfield. A retired teacher who had come to the region to help build schools, gasped back to consciousness after 90 seconds of desperate effort. "I am sorry," Thomas whispered, understanding that he had become a burden. "Leave me. Save yourselves." "It's not happening, Thomas," Emma replied with gentle firmness. "We are all going home tonight." She fashioned a quick harness using webbing from her pack, distributing Thomas's weight between herself and Sophie. It would slow them down significantly, but Emma had not come this far to leave anyone behind. That was not who she was, not the kind of warrior Lieutenant Jackson had trained her to be. They moved through the darkness, following Rashid's path. The young guide had bought them precious time by misleading their pursuers, but Emma could hear vehicles in the distance. Nazari's forces were mobilizing despite the internal conflict that should have kept them occupied. Either he had discovered Farid's betrayal quickly, or his paranoia had always kept reserve forces ready for emergencies. "Emma," Colonel Blake's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Extraction team has the 6 hostages. They are asking about you and 2 others. On our way, Colonel. Estimate 15 minutes to Rally Point Charlie. Negative, Emma. Hostiles have blocked that route. New extraction point is 3 miles north. Can you make it?" 3 miles carrying Thomas while pursued by armed fighters. Emma calculated odds she did not like. "Affirmative, Colonel. We will be there." She did not share the conversation with Sophie or Thomas. They did not need to know how bad their situation had become. Rashid, however, had heard enough to understand. He met Emma's eyes in the moonlight, and she saw acceptance there. He knew some of them might not make it out. They pushed forward, muscles burning, lungs heaving in the thin mountain air. Thomas tried his best to help, his legs moving despite the pain radiating from his chest. Sophie encouraged him with soft words. Her journalist's voice now a lifeline, keeping an old teacher conscious and fighting. Behind them, vehicle lights swept across the terrain. The pursuers were getting organized, using technology and numbers to compensate for Emma's tactical advantages. She estimated they had perhaps 5 minutes before being overtaken. "Rashid," Emma called quietly, "take Sophie and Thomas. Move toward that ridgeline. I will delay them." "No," Sophie protested immediately. "We stay together. This is not a debate." Emma's voice carried command authority that made both Sophie and Rashid freeze. "You have 60 seconds to put distance between yourselves and this position. Use it." Rashid understood military necessity. He took Thomas's weight onto his shoulders and began moving, half carrying the older man. Sophie hesitated, her eyes meeting Emma's with profound understanding. "Jackson would be proud of you," she said simply. Then followed Rashid into the darkness. Emma positioned herself behind a boulder outcropping with clear sightlines. Down their back trail, she had limited ammunition and unlimited targets approaching. The math was simple and brutal. She could buy perhaps 3 minutes, maybe 4 if she was very good and very lucky. The first vehicle came into range, its headlights making it an easy target. Emma fired 3 shots, taking out the driver and front tire. The vehicle swerved off the trail, blocking the path for those behind it. Fighters poured out, taking cover and returning fire. Emma changed position, firing from a new angle before they could zero in on her location. She was not trying to win this fight. She was creating delay, confusion, making the enemy cautious. Every second they spent securing each position was another second Sophie, Thomas, and Rashid had to reach safety. Emma moved like smoke through the rocks, appearing just long enough to fire, then vanishing before concentrated fire could find her. Her earpiece crackled. "Emma, extraction team has visual on your people. 3 more minutes. 3 minutes. Emma checked her ammunition. 11 rounds left. The enemy had regrouped and was advancing more carefully now, using proper tactical formation. They had realized they were facing a professional, not a lucky amateur. She counted at least 18 fighters, probably more in reserve. A bullet grazed her shoulder, burning through fabric and skin. Emma rolled away, ignoring the pain, focusing on the tactical picture. She was being flanked from 2 sides. They were going to surround her position in approximately 90 seconds. Time to move or die. She sprinted toward higher ground, bullets tracking her movement. Pain exploded in her calf as a round found meat, but her leg still functioned. She reached a rocky crevice and pressed herself into it, breathing hard, assessing damage. The shoulder wound was superficial. The leg would slow her down but was not immediately incapacitating. "Emma, your people are secure. Extraction team is pulling out now. What is your position?" Colonel Blake's voice sounded far away, like it was coming from another world where people live through missions like this. Emma looked at the fighters closing in on her position from 3 sides now. She had perhaps 4 minutes before they overran her. The extraction point was 2 miles away, across terrain she could no longer run. "Tell Sophie that debts work both ways," Emma said quietly into her mic. Jackson did not sacrifice himself so she would feel guilty. He did it because protecting the innocent is what warriors do. Tell her to live well and tell the stories that matter. Do not do anything stupid. We can still extract you. Negative, Colonel. Window has closed. Mission accomplished. 8 hostages secured. That is what matters. Emma checked her remaining ammunition one final time. Recommend immediate departure. Things are about to get loud here. She did not wait for his response. Emma Hartwell stood up from her hiding place and walked toward her enemies with her weapon ready. Not running, not hiding, but facing what came next with the same courage that had defined her entire career. The fighters saw her and hesitated, confused by a woman walking calmly toward 24 armed men. In that moment of confusion, Emma saw something beautiful. In the distance, a helicopter rose above the ridgeline, its running lights visible for just a second before it banked away toward safety. Sophie, Thomas, Rashid, and 6 others were going home. That was enough. That had always been enough. Emma raised her weapon and prepared to make her final stand, knowing that some battles were not about survival, but about what you were willing to sacrifice for those who could not defend themselves. Lieutenant Jackson had taught her that. Tonight, she would honor his memory by living and perhaps dying by that truth. But the universe, it seemed, had different plans. Before the first shot was fired, the night erupted with a different kind of violence. Farid Ahmed's forces hit Nazari's fighters from behind, catching them in a devastating crossfire. Emma dove for cover as the battlefield transformed around her, watching in stunned amazement as the internal war she had helped ignite now saved her life. Farid appeared beside her, pulling her toward a vehicle. "Your helicopter has left? Yes? Then you ride with us. We owe you a debt, American warrior. Tonight, we repay it."